Hello, buddy. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 7.21 patch notes. So if you're new to the channel, you can find a link to this Google Doc in the description, as well as timestamps so you can jump around to your favorite parts. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So this is just going to be the patch notes. The tier list video is going to be a separate video, and I'm also going to have a metagame breakdown to explain the tier list. I might put that in the same video. I might make them two separate videos. I'm trying to make the videos a little bit shorter. I know I always say that, but I'm going to try to, get them to under an hour, maybe even 30 minutes. We'll see if we want to go wild. Let's go ahead and get in here. So I think the three biggest gainers off this patch are going to be Galio, Zyra support, and Fiddle support. But we'll talk about that probably a little bit more in the metagame analysis and in the tier list portion of the video. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about what's in the patch notes here, because that's what we're going to focus on for this section. Okay, so the patch notes themselves just came out a little bit ago. The Azir change is not that big of a deal, I don't think. It's less overall damage on his Q later on. It is a little bit earlier. I mean, it's 10 less at level 3. I believe you use this for your lane harass as Azir. So it's definitely a nerf. The Arise damage is the same early, and then it's a little bit less. It's 5 less later on. So it's a little slap on the wrist, but I think he's still going to be really good for Azir players that are really good with him. So this will bring him down just a smidge, but I think he's still a pretty strong pick overall. A top 5 champion, mid lane, I think, still. Okay, Echo. Echo is a weird thing to evaluate because I never really understood why he was an okay jungler for a while anyways, but there was a moment in time where Echo was a pretty good jungler. So they're giving him back his damage on his minions. I think itemization is probably going to keep him out of the jungle more than anything. Itemization on AP supports is really, or AP junglers is really bad right now. So if you look at Echo's numbers, he does have really high numbers. In terms of AP scaling, so he has an 80% on his passive, which is just every time you hit something with 3 abilities or basic attacks. So your Q goes through, tags everything, and then when it snaps back to you, that puts 2 marks on something in the camp. So you can clear raptors really fast in your 3rd attack. Now this will help his clear out quite a lot, obviously, because a lot of his damage is going to be on this passive early on. So it's going to do 60 damage instead of 30 damage to minions, which is going to help him shred through those raptors, small wolves, golems, the small golems, things like that. So I think it's good for him. I just think he's still going to have a problem with itemization in the jungle because he really wants to get Protobelt Lichbane. I guess he can go for the I forgot what the name of it is, the jungle AP item, but I don't know. I feel like the itemization is not that great. I feel like other people can fight him and take him out kind of early. I mean, he's all right. I guess he's an okay damage option in the jungler who has really good late game scaling and assassination. So he's kind of like Elise with less creative gank paths, less potential to dive. I mean, I guess he can dive pretty well with his ult, right? So he can take a lot of damage and then bail out. So he does have pretty good dive. So he's a pretty good assassin. He scales really, really well. He has great AP ratios. He has 150% on his Chrono Break, and then 150% on the shield off of Parallel Convergence. He's got some really, really nice ratios. And then if you hit people with both parts of your Q, it does 90%. And then, of course, the big one is the 0.8 on his passive. So I think he is pretty good in terms of scaling and damage AP. Who knows? I mean, we might see him. My initial thought is he's going to be a little slow early on. Like, this will help his clear speed, but I think he can get kind of bullied out early on by things like Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix, Rengar, Lee, Ezreal, Elise, Jarvan. I feel like there are a lot of champions that could potentially bully him out before he gets items. Because his base damage is kind of high, but not like super high. A lot of his stuff is very conditional. Like, you want to hit him with the Parallel Convergence. You want to hit him with both parts of Time Winder. You want to try to maneuver around to where you get your shadow or whatever close to them so you can chrono break onto your shadow. So he's very difficult to play correctly. Not like super difficult, not like LeBlanc level, but he's pretty hard to play correctly. So we'll see him. I mean, I think he can be a good jungler. I'm not sure. I don't think he's top 5. This will make him top 5, but it does make him certainly a lot more viable in the jungle. Okay, especially maybe against like tanks or more passive like farm junglers, he might be a pretty good choice. All right, Evelynn, doesn't matter. Evelyn's just really bad right now. The problem is she just doesn't have her stealth early game, so she doesn't have any threat on the map. Her gap closers are awful. She just really doesn't have gap closers. And she doesn't have any defense. So she's just kind of reduced to like just a kind of stealthy assassin after level 6 that just can't really contribute much else. So yeah, she's pretty bad right now, which is sad. I mean, a lot of the reworks and new champions have just been really bad right out the gate. So they're not going for the OP stuff. I mean, I guess Xayah and Rakan were pretty good right out of the gate, now that I think about that. But like Ornn was really bad. Like Zen is not that good after the changes. Urgot's not that good. So there are a lot of things that have just kind of flopped. I think they've really erred on the side of safety and not making things too overpowered when they do these reworks, which, you know, is the other end of the spectrum. It's okay. Speaking of overpowered, what are they thinking with this Galio change? Like, I mean, they describe what they're thinking. It's a terrible idea. You're giving him way too many buffs. Just nerf the champion. He's already too good. You don't have to give him compensatory buffs. Just nerf him. It's okay. Drop his numbers. You don't have to give him anything back. He's still going to be really good even if he just dropped his numbers. It's because his kit is really good. He has a lot of crowd control. Any champion that has like a ton of crowd control should not have that much damage. They should be doing like almost no damage. Like I'm thinking like Nautilus is a great example. Now Nautilus has more reliable crowd control than Galio does, but I mean they're both kind of in the same department of just like a truckload of crowd control. Or like Maokai, right? Those champions do like okay damage, but not really that much. What they're doing to Galio here is they're like giving him a slap on the wrist in terms of his survivability, and then just like escalating his damage through the roof. I mean, look at this stuff. They're changing his passive from a 0.4 AP ratio to a 0.7. That's so much more. I mean, that's like, what is that? Let's see. Is that 75? That's not 75% more. Let's say 4. It's not 30. Is it 66% more damage? Something like that. It's a lot more damage. It's almost double the damage, right? Like the scaling on it. So that's just huge. And if you look at Galio, like he can proc that passive a lot if you're a good Galio player, because it's every time you hit somebody with a spell. Now, I don't know if area of effect, like if you hit 2 people, if it just completely reduces it. It's a new champion with an ability. I don't know what new champion means. Like, what's the debuff on that? Four seconds every time Galio hits a new champion with an ability. Okay, so you can only trigger it once per ability per champion. Is that what it is in terms of the static cooldown? So if you hit 2 champions, you basically get it back instantly in a team fight. And it just so happens that every single one of his abilities is area of effect. Area of effect, area, area, area. Potentially. So you can reset this every time he casts an ability. And it's 100% of his base AD. Now it scales off of 70% of his AP and 40% of his bonus magic resistance. What? And it has like a base damage. So, you know, if you're level 9 or so, you know, your next auto is going to do like 82 plus 44 is what, 124. If you have 100 ability power, that's an extra 70, so that's like 714. And if you have like, I don't know, 50 ability power, it'd be an extra 20. I mean, it's like 240 damage or something on his next auto. It does area of effect damage to all targets around it. Yeah, it's not a huge radius, but it still could hit multiple people. I mean, it's just so much extra damage. Those are like super conservative numbers too that he could have. I mean, obviously, if you have like, you know, 100 magic resist and like, you know, 200 ability power, the numbers just start getting like really wacky in terms of the damage. So I don't know why they're buffing that. That's so much extra damage on his passive. And then They're giving his Q a 0.9 ability power. 0.9. That's like an insane ratio. That's like borderline like season 1 like AP Scion type of scaling. If anyone remembers that. Like that's a really like insane number. 0.9 ability power on his ability that he spams to wave clear a lot of the times. And on top of that, they're giving it 3% of the target's maximum health per 100 ability power again. Per half second. Wait, hold on. Maybe I misread that. Let me see this real quick. Okay, so it's plus 3%. Okay, so they're giving it more scaling. I thought that was its base number. Okay, so per 100. Is that how it has been? Have they changed? Okay, so they have changed this. They've updated this already, even though the patch hasn't already gone through. Let me see the history again. I thought it used to do like a base percentage damage. If they changed it from base percentage to only... Oh, okay. Okay, this is starting to make a little more sense. Target's maximum health. Okay. I still think that that's a pretty insane buff, though. Like, that's even... Like, I was reading it as 3% of the target's maximum health. Like, straight up, that's what it was. It was going from 2% to 3%. But it's 1% for every 33 AP that you have. So if you have 66 AP, it's the same. But now it actually scales. So that's even more damage than I thought. So if you have, like, 200 ability power, then it would be doing 6% per half second. What? Is that right? Per half second, and it lasts for one. So if you have 2, it's 6% per half second. So that's 18% of their max health. So it's 9% per 100. Yeah, so it'd be 18% of their max health with an additional 0.6. So that would do 100 and... So if you just have 200 ability power, that would give you 120, 190 base damage, area of effect, once again, to everybody, in addition to up to 18% of their maximum health on a 6-second cooldown. It's 825 range. What? Did it have scaling before? I don't think it had this kind of AP scaling on the max health. I thought it was just straight up max health. Dude. What? Who is passing Riot this crack pipe? Like... That's so much damage. And then now his shield, you know, only like it only gets the full value against physical damage now. It's only half as much as magic damage. So this is the only part of his kit that's nerfed, by the way. Like, this is very clearly an increase. This is, I'm going to argue, a buff. Like, yeah, okay, whatever. They're taking 30 damage off of his base. You get that back at 200 ability power straight up. Normally you get that back. And in addition, you get this insane amount of scaling right here off of this. Yeah, so I would say even probably at 100 ability power, it's going to be a buff. Because, yeah, I would trade... yeah, I would happily trade, what, 15 base damage for an additional, like, 1% of max health. Or 2% of max health, or whatever it is. Like, this is just insane. Like, yeah, maybe, like, level, like... You know, 1 to 5, it's going to be a little bit less wave clear. You know, you're going to go from 130 down to 110. But, you know, once you get a couple of items, with the new itemization that I think he's going to run, I'll talk about that here in a second, it's a huge, huge buff, like, in the mid-game. So, like, 15 minutes on, 10 minutes on, maybe. It's going to be massive. Once he gets his first item, it's a buff. Once he gets Raw of the Ages, which is what he should be building first now, I think, it's going to be a buff. Okay, so now his W, so it's less effective at physical damage, but it also has an AP ratio now. So now he gets an extra 5% per 100 AP, in addition to still getting the 8% from bonus magic resist, in addition to, you know, just gaining this shield that's 20% of his max health. So, like, now if you have that 200 ability power threshold that I keep mentioning, you're going to get an additional 10% against magic damage. So that's going to be 50% against magic damage, in addition to whatever bonus magic resist you get. I mean, if you have 100 bonus magic resist, if you get a Banshee's Veil or something, which would be insane on him in terms of his new scaling, like, looking at like 58% reduction, not including the magic resist itself. And I think that stacks multiplicatively with magic resist. I'm not sure. So if magic resist is blocking 30%, and it has to stack multiplicatively, it'd be overpowered as heck if it didn't. Like if magic resist is blocking 30%, and then his magic damage reduction is blocking an additional 60%, that's a lot. I mean, if it doesn't stack multiplicatively, if it stacks additively, that would be almost 100% reduction. So there's no way they're going to let that happen. Those stats have to stack multiplicatively. Even though they're different stats, it's magic damage reduction and not magic resist. I still think it has to stack multiplicatively. Which means that, like, what that means, if you don't know what multiplicatively means, it means that it would take the 30% first off the magic resist. So let's say that something's going to do 100 damage. It would take the 30% first, take it down to 70, and then it would reduce 60% of the 70. So it would knock off, 42 off of that. And so you would still be able to deal, wait, I had it. 70, 60% is 42. It'd still deal 28 damage. Yes. Still deal 28 damage if it stacks multiplicatively. If it stacks additively, 60% plus 30% is 90% reduction. You would only get 10 damage out of it, 10%. So I think in that scenario I just described, you would actually still get 28 damage instead of 10 damage. So I think that's probably how it stacks. Either way, whatever. Like, okay, so it's less reduction against physical, but it's way, way more against magic. It's like probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 25% more. With 200 ability power, an extra 10% off of a 40% base. So that's huge. And then they nerfed his E damage, right? So it looks like, oh man, this is a pretty good nerf, right? Like, you know, it goes from 260 damage down to 220. That's pretty good. That's a 40% nerf. You're putting a 0.2 ratio on it, so he's only breaking even at 200 ability power. He's just getting his number back. But you got to keep in mind the skill order, right? Justice Punch is the last thing that you max out. And this only affects high-level Justice Punch. So if you have a 100 like level Justice Punch for most of the game until like level 12, after you max out your other two abilities, or until level 13 once you start maxing Justice Punch again, like as your third max, you're going to be doing more damage because this 0.9 doesn't care what level Justice Punch is. You can have a level 1 Justice Punch, and if you have 200 ability power, it's going to give you 180 extra damage. You can have a level 5 Justice Punch, and it's still going to give you 180 extra damage. So this is actually a buff, like a big buff, because you don't max this until last. So you care about the ratio much, much more than you care about the base, because it's the last thing that you max. So this is just straight up a buff, I'm pretty sure. Like, and by the end of the game, you know, by the time you actually get to this, you know, once you're level 18 and you get this maxed out and you're losing the 40, you're going to have 200 ability power. So that's just straight up a buff on Justice Punch. So we've got a pretty big buff on Justice Punch, a at best neutral change to W, weaker versus physical, stronger versus magic. What I'm going to call a pretty strong buff on that Q. Like, yeah, maybe levels 1 to 5, it's a little bit less. But I think overall, definitely after your first item, that's a buff. And then an unequivocal, like, huge buff on his Colossal Smash. So this dude is just going to, like, melt people. The thing about Galio is he has so much excess tankiness. Like, the dude can literally go in right now on live and face tank, like, 4 people off of 2 items. Like, he's so excessively tanky that he can take away some of those tank items. He can afford to go some AP items, especially hybrid items that offer AP plus resistances, either AP plus HP or AP plus magic resist. So, you know, he can afford to shave off some tank and still be really, really powerful. I think this is a very dangerous game they're playing here. I mean, why on earth would you do it? I keep saying that, but just nerf him. Just nerf him. He's like pick banned like 100% at Worlds on 718. He's still the same champion. He hasn't had nerfs for the last 2 patches. He's the same thing people are playing at Worlds right now. He's pick banned like every single game. Let me just look and see. Stats. Someone linked me something. Is this it? Game of Legends stats, players, teams, tournaments. This isn't the site that I'd used before, but we can look at it. Is this? Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Play in all. World Championship 2017. Yeah. So it's like 90. He has a 90% presence, which means he's been banned 47 times, picked 14 times, has a 72% win rate with like a 7 KDA. Like, he's the best mid laner at Worlds. He's not hard to play either. That's the thing. He's oppressive in solo queue too. This isn't like LeBlanc or something like that, where people are just going to have a high fail rate in solo queue. Like, he's absurdly powerful. Like, it's okay to nerf powerful champions. You don't have to give them anything back. Like, just nerf them. So, anyways, I think he is by far going to be the most overpowered thing coming out of this patch. Like, it's disgusting, I think. I mean, I was kind of hyperbolic about Nasus as well. I thought Nasus was going to be a lot stronger after those changes than he was in the competitive scene. But a lot of this stuff, I'm pretty right, you know, in terms of spotting some overpowered stuff. I mean, I was really early on Malzahar. I was very early on Xayah and Rakan. Everyone said they were trash. I said they were awesome. You know, I'm right about a lot of these things, and I think I'm not going to be wrong about this one. This is a massive, massive buff to Galio, I think. As if he needed it. So I think there's going to be a new paradigm with Galio, though. I think we're going to move away from the full tank Galio, and I think we're going to go towards hybrid items with AP, and he's going to be like a bruiser burst mage type of champion. So he's going to put out a lot more damage. He's going to be a little bit less tanky, but you got to keep in mind, once again, that his W gives you so much extra free tank. And so I think we're going to see, I would predict Rod of the Ages plus Protobelt plus Lichbane or Banshees. You already have some people, like on 720, who do the Protobelt plus Lichbane build. The Lichbane is good because you have such low cooldown abilities, and that just stacks with your passive to just do like a huge amount of spike damage on people. So not many people are doing a build like that, but there are some. Yeah, something like this. Like BDD ran this, where you go Proto Lichbane. I think that Protobelt's going to be your core engage. The thing about Protobelt, it gives you CDR, which is very good on Galio. He has a long cooldown on a very impactful ultimate. He has health, which is great, because that scales really well indirectly with his W, because it gives you so much damage resistance, and it scales directly because it gives you a 20% shield against magic. So that's really nice. And then it has that 60 ability power, which once again, AP is going to be super strong on him. And since you're going to be building a lot more AP, then it's going to give you more damage on your bolts, which is nice. And that gives you a little dash to get closer. So I believe you can channel your W. You can flash while you're channeling your W. So I'm pretty sure you can channel your W and then Protobelt forward to get close to people. So I think that's going to be the standard over Righteous Glory. Like, people might still buy Righteous. They did nerf it. It is a bit more expensive now. And Galio's base damages are down. And it's so tempting to build AP on him because of those insane ratios. That I think people are just going to go Protobelt. Now, obviously, it's going to make you less tanky. You're going to lose 30 armor off of that. 100 health and 30 armor. So that is significant. But it's cheaper. This is 2,500 gold. Righteous Glory, I believe, is 2,700 now, or 2,650, something like that. And of course, you get the AP. They both have the CDR. So basically, you're giving up. Let me see how much that's worth in terms of just like raw gold. I think the base health regen is just garbage. I'm not even going to count that. That's not even worth thinking about. So you're basically, you are losing mana, but you're giving up 30 armor and 100 health. See, so 30 armor is 900 gold, 100 health. Okay, so you're giving up in terms of armor and health, you're giving up about 1166 gold worth of defensive stats. And in exchange, you're getting 1,305. So you're getting about 150 extra gold worth of offensive stats. So you're giving up 1,100 defense, you're getting 1,300 offense in terms of just raw gold efficiency. You're also giving up the mana, which is, you know, that is something. It is worth some. So you're giving up the mana, which isn't like a super important combat stat. It is nice to have that on Galio, but especially mid lane Galio, you're often going to have blue buff. And if you're going Rod of the Ages, which is what I'm going to recommend on him now, the mana shouldn't be as much of a problem. But you're basically giving up mana to have that extra damage on your Proto Belt activation. So, you know, I think it's a good bargain. I think it's a good bargain with new Galio. Like, you're giving up defense, you're getting a bit more offense. Now, Banshee's Veil is obviously just, like, insane on him now because it gives you resist, AP, and, you know, the shield itself and health. So Banshee's Veil is good on him. I'm not sure if you'd get it, though. Like, Lichbane's really good as well. You get your mana off of Lichbane, cooldown reduction, move speed, ability power, and then, of course, your on-hit. Your Spellblade passive. So, I think that's how we'll see him. The reason that I say Rod of the Ages now, and I don't see a lot of people doing that right now, but if we look at Rod of the Ages, it's a very, very efficient first buy. People don't do it like on live servers because you don't need the AP because he has bad ratios. But it's a good item. I mean, it's 150% efficient once it gets fully stacked. You like all of these stats. You do need some kind of mana because he is a mana hog. So if you're not going to get it on Proto Belt and you're not going to get a lot off of Lichbane, then having some mana on Rod of the Ages is very good. It's going to give you up to 100 ability power, which is awesome, considering the scaling that you're going to have. 500 health, which once again is great, because that scales so well with your W. And it helps get you through the lane. Not that you have a bad laning phase, but if you take damage, you're going to get mana back. If you spend mana, you're going to get health back. So it's just a really good sustain item in lane to have something that builds out of eternity. Now, you can still go for Abyssal Mask. But the problem with this is your base damages are not as high anymore. You really want the AP. It's so much better, and this is just not nearly as efficient. It's only 90% efficient, whereas Rod of the Ages is 150% efficient, which is insane. For like, the only thing that's even close to Rod of the Ages in terms of efficiency is Morellonomicon, but that doesn't offer you any defensive stats. So I think he's a Rod guy. I think you're going to see Rod plus something, and my suspicion is Proto Belt so that you have better engage. And then after that, depending on what your team needs, you can go Banshees, or Banshees or Lichbane if you need more damage. Or, I mean, heck, after you get that, you could go defensive items. You know, like you could go for your standard Proto Belt, and then you could get like a Gargoyle Stone Plate, or you know, just some other Thorn Mail, just some other kind of defensive item, and that's fine. 'Cause you're still going to have a lot of damage there. You're going to have 100 off of your Rod, and then you're going to have 60 off your Proto Belt. That's still 160 AP. So that's pretty good. If you go the Lich Bane, you're going to hit like a truck, but you're going to be a little bit less tanky. So I think there are some good options here for Galio. But I think that Rod of the Ages and Proto Belt, definitely Rod of the Ages, and then most likely either Proto Belt or Lich Bane, and then you can kind of feel it out from there. But I would guess the standard build would be Rod of the Ages, Proto Belt, Lich Bane, or Banshees. So I think he's going to be ridiculously strong. I think he's going to be one of the best mid laners. Okay, Gangplank, minor buff. Not going to matter. I mean, it's like 1 extra gold per farm. So if you get... even if you get 200 CS by 25 minutes, which is pretty ambitious for a lot of ELOs out there, even if you hit every single one of them with a barrel or a parlay, it's still only going to be 200 gold over 25 minutes. So it's not going to matter. Gangplank likes to scale up. He doesn't do a lot early. He doesn't offer a lot of crowd control. He doesn't rotate very quickly. He just wants to sit there and farm until he gets like 3 items. And I just don't think that's a good place to be in this meta. There are plenty of champions that scale really hard that have a much, much better early and late game. I mean, just think about, things like Talia, Kassadin. Like, they have huge impact, like, right when they hit 6. They can roam and make lots of plays around the map. Gangplank, he can ult different places on the map, but I just think that he's just too massive right now. Like, you can win with him. I just think it's going to be too late. I think games are speeding up. I think you're going to see more AP supports. I think you're going to see more damage gank-heavy junglers. I think you're going to see more damage top laners, mid laners. I just think we're moving back towards a very heavy damage meta. And it's just too fast for him, I think. So there can be really good Gangplanks out there that can make huge differences, but I feel like he just requires too much prep, too much skill, and there's just not enough payout fast enough in the game, even if you are good with him. I think he just takes too long to get online. Because his items are so expensive, too. Like, he needs Trinity Force, Infinity Edge, and Ghostblade before he really starts going off. And, like, Trinity and Infinity, I believe, are, like, almost literally the 2 most expensive items in the game. Like, Gensu's is a little bit more than Infinity. But they are very, very expensive items. Okay, Rammus, buff. I think, because like the reason that you pick Rammus is because they have a lot of AD. You don't early pick Rammus most of the time, and there's not going to be that much AP to hard counter him. I mean, like Azir can do a lot of sustained damage to him. Ryze can. Cassiopeia is not really played anymore, so you're just not going to see enough AP like sustained damage AP champions because you're still not going to blow him up. He's still going to have a lot of health, and so burst champions like Syndra, things like that they still aren't gonna be able to kill him, even with the lowered magic resist on his defensive ball curl. Because magic damage for most mages is burst. It's not sustained. There are a few sustained magic damage users. Like I said, Ryze, Cassiopeia, Azir. But by and large, most mages are burst, and it's not gonna save you against Rammus if you have burst damage, because he's gonna mitigate it. So the sustained damage is through ADs, primarily through AD carries. So that's how you kill Rammus, is you have to do a lot of sustained damage to him. And the fact that he gets, 20% more armor just solidifies him as he's just going to be unkillable by tanks. I mean, if he has 200 armor, he's going to end up with like 380 or something armor off of that. In addition to like Thornmail, like he's just going to be ridiculous. So yeah, I think he's going to be really, really good right now. And there's going to be a lot of people playing AD. People are going to be playing that new Zed skin. A lot of people are playing Kayn. People are still playing like Lee Sin, Jarvan, Kha'Zix, mid lane. People are playing Yasuo a lot now for some reason. Riven, Fiora. Like, there are just so many melee AD champions that get played all the time. I mean, if we look at my newest, like, op.gg, let's see how many. So meta is definitely shifting more towards these, it's a lot. I mean, they've got Akali, Zed, Lee Sin over there. They've got Kayn. Or no, we had Kayn. Yasuo, Jax. They had the Rammus. We had Fiora, Trundle, Illaoi, Lee, Darius, Master Yi. I mean, it's almost literally every single game is like just AD-ish melee champions. Obviously, like Akali's mixed damage, but just people he's going to have a field day against. It's not always, but it's a lot more popular than it used to be. There's Kha'Zix again. Kha'Zix again this game. Ornn. So yeah, I think he's going to be really good right now. Sejuani, I think these nerfs are significant. I heard either Red Mercy or Firewall downplaying this, like, oh, it's not a big deal, whatever. Like, no, it is. And the reason is it's 60 less damage on her E, which is huge. And her base stats, this is pretty big. Her base armor is down by 5, which is a lot. And the armor growth is down by 3, which is a lot. This means she can get beaten up really hard early on by these AD champions like Kayn, Lee, Jarvan, Ezreal. Ezreal is going to shatter her early game. So I think that's really rough. And the base magic resist is down, and the magic resist scaling is down. So all of her stats are down a lot. As soon as people start hitting stats, it hurts. She's also going to be a lot less healthy in the jungle because don't forget, jungle monsters deal physical damage. So when you have less armor, you're going to take more damage in the jungle. A lot more damage. Her passive's okay. Like, you do get more bonuses off the passive, which is good, but they've kind of trimmed her. They've buffed her early game and trimmed her late game on a lot of abilities. So that's how this is. It's just a flat 2 every time in 12 seconds. So it's less powerful in the end game, but okay in the early game. A little bit better in the early game. And then it goes from 120 damage to 60 base. Like, yes, you still do get the shatter. Yes, it is still 20% of target's max health, which is good. But don't discount 60. 60 less damage is a very, very big deal because she casts this a lot in fights, especially with a lot of other melee champions. You know, she's going to cast this 3 or 4 times in a fight. So that's a lot less damage. So she's a lot tankier. She's a lot less tanky, especially early in the game. And she loses a lot of base damage on her E, which I think is a really big deal. So I don't think she's going to be in the gutter, but I definitely think that there will be other champions that can step up to her. Honestly, I don't feel like at Platinum and lower, like she's really that oppressive. Honestly, like she's good, but I don't feel like she is like significantly better than something like Cho'Gath or Jarvan. She's just in the class of like top tier tank. But I don't think she's too far out of line for those other champions. I don't know how Jarvan doesn't have a buff on or a nerf on this patch, but I guess we'll go another patch with him being overpowered. Tiger stance doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, it is a little bit more damage. You get 20% more of your total attack damage, which is good. But the problem with Udyr is it's just like, why would you ever pick him over Master Yi? You know? Master Yi at least has resets. Master Yi farms and has really good objective control. Master Yi splits really well. He's an attack, you know, AD, auto attack based champion. Similarly fast, you know, once he turns on his ult. Much better at team fighting. So, like, Udyr's interesting, and he can definitely be powerful, and he can control objectives. I just feel like if you want to play that type of game, which I don't think is the best way to jungle right now, I think gank heavy, like, junglers with crowd control are kind of where you want to be. But if you do want the counter jungler, farmer, you know, potential split pusher, I would either go with Master Yi and potentially even Shyvana. I've seen Shyvana a lot more lately. I don't think she's great, but I think that she does a truckload of damage. So he's okay. I just think there are better options for like what he wants to do. Echoing Flames, the cooldown is down a lot on it, so it's, you know, from levels 1 to 5, that's the same, and then once you get kind of out of lane, you get to 6, it's 5 less, and then it starts, you know, increasing a little bit more over time. So that's okay. It's not going to help you a lot in the laning phase, but it might help you out later. However, he's doing a lot less damage per leg in the early game. So he only gets back to normal at level 13. So it's like, yeah, you do have lower cooldowns at level 13 for sure. But at the same time, like, up until then, you're also doing a lot less burst damage. And, like, Urgot needs to do burst damage, because not a lot of people are going to be stepping out of position to get hit by legs a lot. So I don't know. It just feels like it doesn't. We're also giving his legs shorter cooldown, less damage to shift some power out of his lane into team fights. Is Urgot's laning phase really that oppressive, Riot? I mean, honestly. Is it? Just buff him, man. He's bad. Like, just buff him. Like, they're playing this little game with a lot of these champions where they're like giving the overpowered champions, they're giving them something in return, like Galio. And they don't need to. Like the Sejuani treatment, that's how you should treat Galio. Just straight up nerf the numbers. Like the champion's really strong right now. Anyways, just straight up buff Udyr. He needs help. But anyways, as it stands, it's not going to matter. He's still going to be pretty bad, I think. I mean, the R is decent. Like, faster range is nice, or faster speed on the projectile is nice. It's going to cost you a lot more mana early on with your Q, which sucks. Detonation time is down, which is good. I don't know. It's just not going to be enough. It's just a weird combination of nerfs and buffs, and he's still going to be fairly weak. Oh, I did forget to write down this. This isn't going to matter. I mean, the mana mean stacking faster basically only applies to Ezreal. I mean, I guess you could put it on Jace. That's mostly Ezreal. 3 stacks per 12. Wait, what? Oh, I guess so if you're walking around, you're not gathering stacks every like few seconds. You can stockpile up to 3 pretty much. What? Interesting. Okay, whatever. So I don't think it's going to make that big of a deal. I don't think it's all of a sudden going to make Ezreal like a must pick or anything, because he uses his abilities like every 4 seconds anyways most of the time. So he's not going to be sitting there, like not casting abilities for 12 seconds when he has tier most of the time. So it's okay. Frozen Heart gets an extra 300 gold worth of armor, 200 gold worth of armor. That's good, but it's not gonna matter. I still don't see people getting Frozen Heart. Like, the problem with this item is you're paying so much gold for mana. They already they have it updated. So this is what its cost analysis is, even with the new one. Yeah, it's 115% efficient now, which is good. But it's still kind of expensive. It's 2,700 gold. And the big thing is you're paying 560 gold for mana. Now, most champions who want this are not going to need that much mana, right? So, I would just love to see them take mana off of this. Like, just reduce the mana to like 200 and then just reduce the price to like 2,400. Something like that. That would actually be helpful. But as it stands, you're just overpaying for mana. And it's like, why would you buy this instead of, other tank items like Thorn Mail, Spirit Visage, Courage of the Colossus, or not Courage of the Colossus, Warmogs, Gargoyle Stoneplate, Locket, Knight's Vow. Like, there are just so many better items than this item. Like, the 15% Cripple is nice. But it's just not strong enough, I don't think, to make enough of a difference. So it's an okay item. I just like to see the price lowered and just take off some of that excessive mana. Just 400 so much. Just make it a 200 mana item and drop the price by 200. Even though it'd be slightly less efficient, I think that'd be a good, fair trade-off. Okay, Ardent Sensor. So this is the thing that everybody's clamoring about, and I think it's much ado about nothing, honestly. Ardent Sensor's still going to be really good. Enchanters are still going to be really good. So, I'm going against the grain. I just watched, like, part of Philol's video where he's like, oh, Ardent Sensor supports are dead. Thank God, finally. I feel like he's just pandering. Or maybe he didn't run the numbers. It's still a really, really good item. I mean, ask yourself this question. Is a billionaire poor if she loses $500 million? She's still going to have at least $500 million. That's what you want to think of, because that's what it is with Ardent Sensor. Like, that item has been so ridiculously powerful for a long time. And I've been talking about this item for a really, really long time. It just never got any spotlight because Redemption was ridiculously powerful for like the first 9 or 10 patches of the season until they nerfed it a lot. And then that's when people started thinking, oh, Ardent's okay. Janna might be an okay champion. And then they finally figured it out around like, what, 7.14, 7.15? I've been pounding the table on Janna and Ardent Sensor since like 7.5. So, it's not going to matter that much. It is going to open up a space for particularly mage supports to start coming back. We'll talk about that in the next video when I talk about meta shifts. So, I think Zyra and Fiddle can definitely find a place here, especially Zyra. and that's going to help her out a lot. But in terms of enchanters, they're still going to be very strong because plus healing and shielding is still a stat. It's still a ridiculously strong stat that other classes of support just don't have. It's so cheap and it multiplies so well with AP and all of your healing and shielding because of the way they all stack together. So it's not going to change that. And the fact that tank items are still really bad, like the itemization, Eye of the Equinox is total trash. Well, I talked about this the other night on stream. People were saying Eye of the Equinox, could be good. It's way too expensive. It has a 650 gold combined cost, and that's just way too much. And Knight's Vow, they've nerfed a couple of times because the jungler keeps using it. They're probably going to nerf Turgons at some point because AD carries keep using it. So, it's just tanks can't have nice things a lot of the time because other champions break them. They're already talking about nerfing Locket as well. So, I just feel like tank supports, it's not going to be the time for tanks to come back. And AP, I think AP supports can definitely start coming back now that they've nerfed Ardent, because AP supports are, like, Zyra in particular is pretty good against these, like, really low damage scaling champions early on. So, like, Tristana, Twitch in particular, she's very good against those. And so that's going to help her out. And now that Ardent power spike is not going to be as strong. So I think the real winner here is Zyra and Fiddle. But I do still think that Janna's going to be really good. Sona's going to be really good. Just all of the standard Ardent Sensor users. And I think they're going to keep using Ardent Sensor. I don't think they're going to switch out. Like, Philo was like, well, I don't know if you should buy this item anymore. Maybe you should rush Athene's Unholy Grail or whatever. So I was like, okay, well, let's run some numbers. Let's look at this. So base calculation, here's Ardent Sensor. If you want to follow along at home, you can look at it. There are just too many lines on this item. There are too many stat lines on this item. It gives you 5 different stats that are all amazing by themselves. Even if there was no passive on this item, it's like straight up they removed this, it would still be a reasonable buy. I'm serious. It would be a reasonable buy for enchanters if it had no passive whatsoever because these stats are so good. Like, they're so good. The value of these stats, the base value on these stats is almost 2,500 gold on a 2,300 gold item. And then when you look at the passive, once you're level 9, which is probably about when you'll be able to complete this, maybe even a little later. But I did the calculations at level 9. You'll have 12 on-hit damage, which is 300 gold worth of stats. You'll have 20 attack speed, which is 500 gold worth of stats. So that means that every person that you buff from level 9 is going to have at least 800 gold worth of stats on them. Let that sink in. 800 gold per person that you buff. So single target cast. So if you just cast it on your AD carry, remember they changed it to where your AD carry and you get the buff. So both people get the buff. That is a total of 4,092 gold worth of value. That's 177% gold efficient. So that's the equivalent of 4 kills. So just think about whenever you complete that item, you basically, and you buff your AD carry, you're giving your team 4 extra kills. So if your team only has 10 kills, now you have 14. When you get a 5 target cast, so if you're on a champion like Sona who can buff all 5 people, or a Janna who ults, or if you hit, multiple, if you hit all 5 people with Redemption or something like that, and they all get this buff, or Locket, it becomes 282% efficient. So that's equal to 10 kills. So yeah, it ranges from anywhere from 177% efficient to 282% efficient at level 9. And don't forget, as the game progresses, that number is just going to go up and up and up. Right? Does it have the max value? Yeah, they've already changed it on here. So at the maximum value, it's going to be 1,250 gold per person. Okay, so it looks like a total of 380% efficient at max level if you affect all 5 people on your team. So yeah, it's just crazy efficiency. Now let's compare it. So if you take a redemption, same deal, level 9, no other items. This is the thing that you rush. If you hit 2 people with redemption, and I'm just picking 2 people because that's with the single target cast, you're affecting 2 people. You get 175% efficiency. So that's actually pretty similar. If you hit 5 people with redemption, you get 290% efficiency. So those numbers are almost the same as Ardent Sensor numbers. But you got to take some things into account. First of all, I'm not counting the damage on redemption. But then, so if you hit enemies with it and you're dealing that true damage, you're going to get even more value out of it. But you also got to keep in mind redemption has a much higher fail rate. You can't mess up Ardent Sensor unless you just like misclick your shield or heal. It's a point click. It works. All right. For 6 seconds, there is no cooldown. You can have like 100% uptime on a lot of enchanters with Ardent Sensor if you have a lot of CDR, or pretty close to 100% uptime on it. So it's always there. It's always active. And you can't miss it. Whereas with redemption, people can run out of it so they don't get the heal. You could just misfire it and put it in the wrong place. But, it's highly, highly unlikely that you're going to be able to hit 5 people with it. Sometimes it's unlikely that you're going to hit like 3 people with it. Now, it does have global use, though, or semi-global, so you can influence other lanes with it. So it still is a pretty good item, but the stats on it are also really bad compared to Ardent Sensor. So if you look at Sensor, this is all good stuff. Like, you have a healthy amount of mana regen, just 50% to help you out, 60 AP, which is a great stat, cooldown reduction, plus healing and shielding, and 8% movement speed. Whereas if you look at Redemption, it's going to be 10% healing and shielding, no movement speed, and then it's got a lot of health regen and mana regen, which is okay, but it's not amazing. It does have some health on it, which is good, and the CDR. But you're losing that 60 AP is the kicker. You're losing 60 AP, and you're losing 8% move speed. So, I think the base stats, like, if the active is not available, then Ardent Sensor is just going to be better, like, almost always. And the final one, if we look at Athene's Unholy Grail, I'm just assuming you get Eye of the Watchers and then Athene, so you get that extra mana regen. You're gonna be paying 2,100 gold for 2,761 gold value, which is about 132%. So that's about 2 kills. Now the passive at level 9, every time you use that passive, you get 452 gold worth of value off the healing that you apply to other people. But that's going to require you to do 680 damage, pre-mitigation damage, in order to unlock that 452 damage. So you're not going to be able to do that at level 9 with most champions. Even with Sona, it's going to take like 2 rotations of Q and auto attacks to be able to get that. So there's not really a fast way to get that number. You could get it maybe 8 to 10 seconds into a fight. You could fill it up and use it again. Unless you're on an area of effect champion that also has a heal, that could do a lot of damage. Like, I guess if you go in with, like, Rakan and you tag, 4 people with your ult and then shield back on your 80 carry, then you might get the full value out of it. So there might be some champs where you could do it, but it would certainly take a while. So, the bottom line is, it's not a good item early on. Like, you need more mana regen to make it worth it. So, if you wait until level 13, however, and you have Eye of the Watchers, Ardent Sensor, Redemption, and then you get Athene's as your 3rd major item, now its value goes up to 3,482 from 2,761 because you're getting 100 AP off of it. And the passive, because you're going to be at least level 13, is also going to be higher. So that means that Ardent is still the best rush item, Redemption is the best next item, and then Athene's is the best item after that. Now, if you're behind, you might have to get some defensive items, but just like in the Rosie scenario where you've got a lot of assists, you're surviving very well, and there are a ton of team fights going on, and you're relatively safe, this is the build. This is still the build that you should get. Okay. And then finally, my top 5 predictions for each role. I think Cho'Gath's still going to be King of the Hill top lane. That champion is just still disgusting. He has so much wave clear. He's almost impossible to kill in lane. And he's just so relevant. Even if he falls behind early, he just murders everybody later. Like, he's still just a complete terror. J4, also extremely good top lane. I don't see him that much because I ban him almost every game. But yeah, a ton of burst damage, great team utility, excellent kind of unique crowd control that can't be cleansed or QSS'd. It's very strong. I do think that Jax is really good right now. I talked about this last time in terms of his build order and being able to get Sterix, the new Sterix, and how good that would be on him. So I think that's still standard. He's going to be really strong. Fiora is another one that is very good right now top. A lot of people fail with her, but you know, if you just kind of stay relatively close in the lane, then you can actually take over a game right later on. So you just have to survive the lane. And then Renekton, I think, is a sleeper. Like, Renekton is very impactful. He's very good at bullying out Jax. He's one of the premier champions against Jax early on. He's good against Fiora. And he still is like semi-tanky later, but he also does a ton of damage. So I think he's really good. And he's not that difficult to play. Like, all you really have to do to play Renekton is just learn how to cancel your W animation with Titanic Hydra, and that's about it. All right, mid lane. I think the best mid laner is Cass for solo queue. Kassadin, I just always dread when he's on the enemy team, and I'm always excited when he's on my team. The champion is just so consistent. Like, he's just so easy to play. He's point click, and he just destroys any other mages in mid lane. Like, he's just highly mobile, very tanky because he rushes Rod of the Ages. He goes Rod into Lich Bane. Yeah, I mean, there's just not a lot to say. He's mobile, he's semi-tanky, he does a ton of damage, he can roam really well. He does the things that he lacks is he doesn't have the best laning phase, and he doesn't have a lot of wave clear, but other than that, he's just amazing for solo queue. Talia's another one. You know, I might just go ahead and put Talia at the top. I think Talia probably is number one over Kassadin. I don't know, they're both really, really good, but Talia's better at playing from behind, and she has better wave clear, which is instrumental in playing from behind. So she has really high scaling on her abilities. She can roam the side lanes very well. She's very fast, so she can rotate the old-fashioned way even without her ult because of her passive. She moves really quickly. She has great poke, great burst, great all-in. She can initiate fights with her long range, sort of knock forward. So, I mean, she's just the whole package. Like, she doesn't have a lot of defense. She doesn't have shields or anything like that. So, if, like, champion can gap close onto her, then they can kill her pretty easily. But it's hard to just traditionally run at her because of her ability to use the knockback, and then also her little, I think it's her W that throws out the little, I don't know what you call them, little boulders on the ground. So those two are very strong. I think Galio is going to be number 3, this kind of like hybrid AP version of Galio that I mentioned before. So I talked a lot about him. He's really strong. Azir's still really good. Tons of sustained damage, great at cracking down tanks, great zone control, great scaling. And then finally we have Syndra, still really good, can still assassinate squishy targets. A little bit on the difficult side to play in terms of hitting all your stuns, but other than that, she's pretty strong. Jarvan in the jungle is still going to be number 1. I think Ezreal's number 2. Ezreal is just a complete menace in the jungle. He just takes over, bullies out other junglers. He scales really hard. His itemization is awesome. Ezreal is just a powerhouse in the jungle right now. I'm always pretty confident when there's an Ezreal jungle on my team, which sounds weird because when he first came out, like, you know, everybody was terrified. Like, oh my god, he's terrible. But people have had a chance to practice him more. People have studied it more, and they understand him a bit more. And I think he's really strong. Rammus, I've got it number 3 here. He's just a menace. He's really, really fast. He's great against enchanters. He's great against assassins. Like, the champions that are really good against him aren't played very often. So, like, Fiddle's very good against him because Fiddle can silence him out of his ball roll or fear him. Janna is pretty good against him. Janna is played a decent amount, but people won't be playing her as much because they'll think that Ardent Censor's awful. Because they won't run the numbers on it. So I think he can exploit a lot of the matchups that are out there right now. And that people just aren't playing a lot of sustained AP damage champions. Sejuani, we talked about Sej. I think she's still good, just fell down a little bit. And then Gragas is still pretty good as well. Just has great utility in his kit, does pretty decent damage. Good crowd control, naturally pretty tanky, so Gragas is pretty good. And then finally with AD, how are we looking on time here? Well, it's about an hour. I mean, I guess that's not too bad. I was hoping to get it done in 30 minutes, but I talked a long time, I feel like, about Galio. So top AD, I think Draven's number one. Like, if you have a one-trick Draven, he's just so oppressive. He does so much damage early on. He's very good with almost any support. Like, he can scale with something like a Jano or a Lulu, or he can go, like, hardcore damage early on with someone like, you know, Zyra. So I think he's just good with almost everybody. He is hard to play, but he's very, very oppressive. And most people that play Draven are one-trick Dravens. And so he's a very scary champion bot lane. And if he gets ahead, obviously, he's just going to get showered with gold. So it makes it really difficult for him to come back. Even if he doesn't get kills, he still scales so well off of his Q and his W that he's just very difficult to deal with. He's really good into like close range, 80 carries that don't have a lot of utility. So like Vayne, he just crushes Vayne in lane. Good against Sivir. And just other types of champions like that. So I think it's pretty good. Like, he's going to have a harder time. He's really good against Twitch in lane. He's going to have a harder time against someone like a Varus or a Kate that can harass him down a little bit, and they have a bit more utility. But overall, he's pretty good. Twitch, just an absolute terror. I mean, he could be number one potentially. He can get bullied out early by Draven, Kate, Varus, and any kind of early game aggression support. So he's the most like tenuous early game. He has a really rough early game, and he's not going to scale as well because Ardent just got nerfed. Coin just got nerfed the patch before that. So, you know, enchanters in general just aren't going to have enough gold. It's going to slow down their generation 2 Ardent. Or if they do decide to go Coin and just full out rush Ardent, then they're not going to have as much mana in lane. And they could get bullied out a lot easier. So I still think that he's good. He's just a little bit more risky than he had been. Varus, I actually have at the number 3 slot. I thought I heard my daughter, but no, I'm just hearing things. Varus I had at the number 1 or the number 3 slot here. And the reason for this is I feel like the meta is shifting. We'll talk about that in the next video, so I don't want this one to be too long. We are shifting more towards early game domination, utility, 80 carries. I feel like because people will be shifting away from Ardent Sensor, and people are already moving away from tanks and shifting towards more damage-oriented champions, especially like in the jungle and top lane. So we're seeing way more Jaxes, Fioras. I saw a Wukong top lane. Riven, people are playing Aurelia a lot. So we're just seeing a lot less tanks top, and even in the jungle to some extent, we're seeing a lot more Kanes, Ezreals, things like that. And so what that means is you're not going to have as much of a front line, so you need utility. You either need mobility, so you can escape, or you need to have some kind of crowd control in your kit. And so I like Varus. He has that really short cooldown ultimate, which not only crowd controls the person that he hits, but also potentially crowd controls multiple other people. It just creates an excellent sort of zone of control around you where people have to back up a lot of the time. He has really good burst damage early on. Like, not like Misfortune or Gen level, but pretty good. I mean, you know, if someone gets rooted with Zyra and then he lands a couple of autos and then like W arrow, they're probably going to die. So he has excellent range too. He has 575 range, so he outranges a lot of other 80 carries, so he gets to sneak in some extra harass. So I think he's a pretty good balanced champion. He has really nice scaling once he gets Gensu's plus Blade the Ruined King. Pretty good scaling in his kit. And then he also has some burst damage early and some team utility. So overall, I think he's coming back. He's definitely pretty good on this patch. Caitlyn could potentially be the number 1 80 carry, but the problem is like so few people play her correctly. Like, she looks very simple to play. You just have huge range, you auto attack, and you keep yourself safe with traps, but that's so hard for a lot of people to do. They don't sneak in those extra auto attacks while they're trading in lane. They just simply try to farm without harassing. And then trap placement is really suspect. A lot of people do not use their traps in an optimal way. And then headshot combos are definitely suspect. You know, I see so few people trying to go for the net Q combo. So what you should do is if someone steps on a trap, you should normally headshot them and then net backwards, hit them with the net. While you're going backwards, you throw a Q at them, and then you headshot them again as soon as you land. So you have to be able to execute that combo if you're playing Caitlyn. If you do that, then they're probably going to be dead. It's going to knock off like 70% of their health. But you have to be able to do it. It's not enough if they step on a trap just to simply hit them with an auto attack. You want to at least throw a Q their way and then hit them with auto. So You know, she could be as high as number 1, like I said, but most people won't play her correctly. All these champions are easier to play. I would argue Draven's probably even easier to play. That's bold to say that, but I don't know. I think they're on the same level. I used to think Kate was really easy, but I've seen so many bad Kates that there's just no way it's easy. Like, just being able to land those combos and just knowing like how to position around your traps, having the reaction speed to use your net to get away from people when they're trying to use their gap closer on you. Like, there are so many nuances to Kate that make her a lot more difficult than people think. Then I have Tristana. Tristana's just kind of a generic pick. Like, she's pretty good right now. She's very safe. So I think that she's good. She could deserve a higher spot as well. She just doesn't have a lot of early game presence. She can get bullied out by all of the previous 4 champions. Even Twitch, I think, can bully her out early. So she just does not have a lot of power early game. And she scales well, obviously, but she's not going to scale as well as Twitch or Draven, most likely. So, I don't know. She's okay. It's just kind of limited utility and some pretty bad matchups. I think Varus is pretty good into her because he can stop her from jumping away with his ult. And Caitlyn outranges her early. I just think that she has bad matchups against these other 4. And then Xayah is another one who could deserve to be higher, but she's very difficult to execute, kind of like Caitlyn. People have to really set up their feathers correctly and get those really big feather storms with the E. And a lot of people just don't do that right. So she's okay. She has a bit of a rougher... She's like good with some matchups. Like, she's surprisingly really good with Braum. Because if you land the Braum stun, or if you land the Feather Storm stun, then you're automatically going to get another one most of the time. I could see her being pretty good with Fiddle, too, for the same reasons. Like, you throw down the Fear, and then she just drops feathers on them, and then Blade Callers them back. And gets the stun, or the root, rather. So anyways, these are my top 5 for each role. And that's going to be it. So thank you very much. Have a good day. Stay tuned. I will have the tier list available soon. And I'll see you next time.